Pause for a moment, take a breath, feel awe and appreciation for being alive. You're here, present, listening. Welcome to the audio version of Awe Digital Wellness Podcast, where we explore mental health, happiness, and the beautiful, messy, complicated relationship we have with ourselves, other humans, and with technology. Make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app and on our social medias, and more importantly, to visit and reach out to us on our website at awedigitalwellness.com. Each week, we'll dive into the science, the stories, and the practical strategies that help us thrive, both online and off, because well-being isn't about disconnecting from technology, it's about creating real connections and communicate with communities with open discussions. Even the difficult topics, we will get to it. Let's dive into this week's episode.
And we are live with the first AWE podcast of 2026. I hope everyone who is watching and listening has had a great, happy start to the new year of 2026. I'm here with my partner in crime, Christian Dominique, today to talk about calm tech in 2026. Christian, how's your start to the new year been so far?
Very calm as the subject of today. So happy new year to you, Marc, for your loved ones. To how 2026 can be a little bit calmer and actually more productive. So how could we imagine we are slower and still being more productive than speeding and doing everything so fast?
Yeah, well, I thought a little bit about today's conversation. Wanted to start off with a little story because I actually spoke with a client recently who was telling me about New Year's resolutions. I thought, like, why does an arbitrary month of the year like January determine when we can change our lives? Why does it have to be January 1st? New year, new me. This is the time to like make everything just different, shed the 10 pounds or whatever, achieve my financial goals. Why does it have to start in January 1st? Like, well, the future that you perceive is actually happening right now, every moment. Like, it can happen right now. And oftentimes there's been studies showing that, well, they've measured the efficacy of New Year's resolutions, gym memberships. There's been a study looking at this, and they've shown that people who signed up for a new gym membership in the beginning of January, 70% of those actually drop off by the end of February, meaning that motivation is short-lived. It's not very sustaining. The problem is that people don't really focus on habits. They focus more on the motivation of new year, new me, which is not, again, it's not sustainable for the long term. Really have to think about, okay, what are the things that I'm doing today that I've been repeatedly doing over the last year, a couple of years, that I would need to stop? And what sort of new habits would I need to start and implement a few systems to ensure that you actually carry through with those, right? If it's social media addiction, download an app blocker, buy a phone lockbox, start measuring the amount of time that you spend on social media per week, find an accountability partner, create some consequences where if you use your phone for more than 10 hours a week, you have to pay your accountability partner $1,000, right? Those are real things that you can do today that will actually make a difference without having to wait for some arbitrary date, New Year's resolution to come around for you to have short-lived motivation in your life. I think the second part of your question is, how do we stay ambitious without getting burned out, right? Without trying to move too quickly. I think there's been a lot of discussion around this topic for millennia, since the dawn of time. The Buddha originally said that we don't have to constantly remind ourselves of desire, because desire is a form of suffering. You remind yourself of what you don't have, and people are really desperate to get that thing. They have to move fast, but it actually doesn't really change the outcome. If anything, it creates more negative consequences for yourself in the form of burnout. Just because you are calm doesn't mean you're lazy. You can be calm and still care about the thing that you want. And so that's the topic of discussion for today.
Thanks for the distinction. And yes, Buddha and other philosophers are relevant today in 2026. Everyone's talking about tech and AI, but we do have some, fundamental humanness and human wisdom that can educate and advise us a little bit in terms of what our priorities should be. I love the study that you mentioned, and probably people know that intuitively that now we have a number 70%. So you have 7 out of 10 chance of whatever resolution you have today, January 1st or 2nd, that by the end of February, it's no longer active. So again, we're here to have discussions and also to help with giving tools and habits to people who might find it, encouraging today. But again, if we're trying to go too fast, we're forgetting to put the foundations in what will become a more sustainable, happier habits that we can build. Or you talked about the smarter phone and other tools that can have positive psychological motivation. And I think we'll be talking also about, apps and AI, and specifically our reset program, which allows people for 25 minutes of calm, rest, breathing, and things can be slower and better, right? We now think that with AI, everything has to be so fast, right? So I type in a prompt and things are coming out. And are we verifying that that's good quality? That's the good intention? That's the good purpose that we're trying to do, right? So I know everyone has probably work and school objectives, family, and other creative objectives this year. Just remember that it's not only about getting it done quicker, but it's about the quality of the output and also the process, the journey, right?
Yeah. And I think that AI trains us, like you said, to deliver the output much faster, right? To get more done. It definitely increases productivity, but it also increases expectation, and increasing expectation without the tangible output oftentimes creates anxiety, right? Because you have a certain expectation of what result. And when you go into the real world where things don't work as quickly as AI, right? You're not getting those results as fast as you want. That causes you to be in a more anxious state, right? And get upset that reality is not delivering as quickly as perhaps AI can. And so we've talked before, we've spoken before on this podcast about the negative effects of AI on the brain. And I think as much as we celebrate it, just be mindful of the fact that wanting to work at 100 miles per hour constantly might have some damaging effects on your brain.
Yeah, and you talked about expectation and the desire that you mentioned from Buddha, right? So Buddha mentioned that both desire and aversion are cause of suffering, right? So contentment comes from being happy what we have now. Now, as you mentioned, calm is not being lazy. It's being in a state of mind, right? And when we think about attitude or set, I think that's what we should really achieve to change. We talked a lot about habits. What's even better than habits? Mindsets, even better attitudes, right? So what's your attitude in life? And that's much more sustainable than having a goal or a habit change or change back over time. And how can we start to motivate people to change their mindset, to believe that the mindsets are achievable, and to actually carry the world with this attitude of confidence and of calm at the same time?
I would add another layer to what you were saying and say, beneath mindset is also identity. A lot of people feel like they're a success or a failure. And that perception of their own identity is often influenced by life experience. So if you've been unemployed for, a few months and you're just not having trouble finding jobs, you might assume that I'm unwanted, right, by employers. And I'm unemployable because I can't find a job, right? That becomes your identity, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So all these things come together and they also form your habits, right? At the core of habits, mindsets is your identity, right? So be mindful that identity is not like written in your DNA. It's not an immutable characteristic of who you are. Identity is oftentimes a story that you tell yourself based on life experiences that you've accumulated. I really hate the term new year, new me, but you do have the potential to reinvent yourself if you become aware of the story that you are constantly telling yourself again and again. And it does not need to be the story that determines you. If anything, you can realize that story is not helping you anymore. And you can decide, I'm going to write a new story for myself, which can be very empowering for a lot of people. It's very easy to just fall into these unconscious habit traps of like, I'm a loser, I'm unemployable, I can't do this, I can't do that. It's just an easier way to explain what is happening to you.
Well, yeah, of course, we work with CBTs and limiting beliefs. And it's more and more clear that everyone has not only limiting belief, but full stories. And, even as aware as you and I could be, or one can be, there's still many things that you need to unlearn and unpack and challenge yourself and saying, is this reality? Is this just my subjective appraisal? Is it society's appraisal of me or of things? And you have a good point, or a new year, new me is like, me, myself, and I is the ego, but we can use those stories with imagination and creativity, and just letting them weigh down with either negativity bias, which is poor me, I'm horrible, or positivity bias, which is I'm more important than others, which is also not the case, right? And when we kind of see all of these with awareness as nuance, and remember that awareness is one of our 3 pillars at awe, we start to understand that those stories can be against us or serving us, or there might not even be real. So we can have more ability to use them in the right way and to see them for just stories instead of facts.
Absolutely. And I think something else I'd add is that while speed, working really quickly, delivering looks impressive, calm is what really allows for that pattern recognition, judgment, and timing. The ability to see that certain situations, and this is why I love that you mentioned CBT, certain situations in life trigger specific thoughts that might not be 100% accurate, right? They might not be extremely reflective of the situation, but nevertheless, there's a pattern to be recognized when you approach it in a calm fashion rather than speed, right? Need to get everything done now. Urgency. That disrupts that ability to recognize the patterns, to recognize the stories that you are perhaps telling yourself that are actually not aiding you necessarily. So if you want to avoid falling into the unconscious trap of, stop going to the gym at the end of February because you don't have that motivation anymore, you have to be able to take your foot off the gas pedal and recognize, okay, it's actually me who's creating these problems because of these patterns that I'm not aware of. And to become aware of the patterns, I need to just take a moment, breathe, right? Perhaps just sit with my thoughts, recognize what thoughts arise in the specific situation, and reevaluate whether the decision or the approach you're taking is the one that will produce the outcome that you want.
Thanks, Marc. And, we can give other types of New Year's common wishes. So people want to be more productive, be more present with their family, eat better, go to gym, do some more sports, be creative, right? Maybe do a painting, write a book that they've never had time to do. So all those things are possible only if you do take some time to reflect. And, we talked about the gym. A lot of people are signing up for gym memberships. How about mental gym? And how about what's important to spend time and money to develop your mental wellness versus just your physical body? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's the obvious ones, which is like reading a book or spending more time with friends or starting a meditation habit, for example, is extremely effective because you learn to really become aware of certain distractions or stimuli in the environment that perhaps are having some effect on you mentally. Going to the gym is probably one of the best ones, that I can recommend. But like with the gym example, you don't want to rely on short-term motivation. Find a gym buddy, right, who will go to the gym with you. Sign up for an app, right? Make it as frictionless as possible for yourself. That going to the gym, putting your clothes out the night before, having a meeting up with somebody at the gym, all this stuff, like sound mind, sound body, man. Like this, it's not rocket science what we're talking about. It's very easy to understand that there is a lot of positive effects of getting out of the house, meeting with people, going to the gym, exercising, strong cardiovascular workout 4 times a week on average has similar effects to taking SSRIs. There have been studies on that as well. So I don't think there is a secret sauce here. It's really information that's out there. But I think a lot of people they struggle with going from 0 to 1.
From staying there with consistency, right? So it's like, one step forward. And maybe, as you mentioned, we notice people can take the step from 0 to easier on the new year because there's a cultural, reasoning or social pressure to say, or mental pressure yourself saying, hey, I can do better this year. Even though 2025 might have been good or great, you always want to, try to have some type of growth. And I think that implementing, as you mentioned, some habits and some new things, right? So we all know about the gym. We all know, and thanks for mentioning that to the audience, right? So accountability, if you plan to do this on your own and you're very motivated, that's good, but that might wane as well.
Awesome.
If you're finding an accountability partner that he's not or she's not motivated, that might also wane, right? So the idea is that you can motivate yourself to be that person to motivate the other and vice versa. And that might be for physical gym, that might be for sports, that might be for playing chess, that might be for going skiing, which, I'm going skiing today, and I have a little sore elbow, but still going because we're going with more than one people. We're motivated. We're doing things, right? I think physical and mental are always holistically linked, and we have to make sure that we're giving the elements to people to make sure that they're, doing their challenge, right? So one day at a time, but, are you doing your 30-day challenge, your 50-day challenge, right? So I have some families and friends. We have this new tool that I built, the price for you, Marc, but we're build this 2-2-1 practice, right? So it's 100 day. I'm going to do with a few people that are going to be accountable with me. So, and every day we're writing down 2 gratitude, nice. 2 admiration, and 1 appreciation, right? So that's 5 minutes a day. And that just helps you be more and more motivated.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah. Gratitude is super important to remind yourself, like, not just how grateful you can be, but like how lucky you can be, for the things that you have that other people might not have in their life. Super important consideration. There's one other note that I wanted to make on the topic of behavior change. There is a formula for behavior change. There is a way to change unwanted behaviors, right? And it comes down to 2 things, right? If you want to change a behavior, you can either, if it's unwanted behavior, you have to associate it with some consequence or with some very unbearable, uncomfortable pain. You have to associate it with something that you really, really don't want to happen. And if there's a behavior that you do want to maximize, you need to associate that with some really great amount of pleasure in your life. I'll take an example of one of my clients. So he wants to lose 4 kilos, so the equivalent of 10 pounds in 1 month. Actually, I told him to lose the 10 pounds because he said to me initially, I think I can lose 10 pounds and I'll do this by the end of March. And I said, hey, if something really terrible was going to happen to your family and the only way to prevent that from happening, and I just hypothetically, I would never want anything terrible to happen to the family. Just for the sake of the example, I said, if something really terrible was going to happen to your family and the only way to prevent that from happening was to lose 10 pounds, would you be able to lose 10 pounds in 1 month? He said, absolutely. I would do everything I can to lose those 10 pounds. Yeah. I said, okay, so it's not a problem of that defies the laws of physics. We're talking about just a motivational issue here. Because if you had the right motivation, then you would lose the weight in 1 month. And the problem is that you don't have a strong why, a strong purpose to lose the weight. It's some arbitrary abstract goal somewhere in the future, but there's no real pressing, urgent reason to lose that weight right now. So I said to him, okay, how about we do this a little challenge, right? Instead of just, having this therapeutic relationship where we see each other one-to-one, let's make a little challenge out of this. If you don't lose 4 kilos by the end of January, you owe me 1,000 euros. And you could see like the terror in his eyes, like, oh my God, right? It's a lot of money. But if you do get those 4 kilos, if you do manage to shed the 10 pounds, you'll get a month worth of free sessions with me. And he was like, and I could see the contemplation on his face. He's like, okay, let's do it, right? Let's do it. But now he has real skin in the game, and real skin in the game means that he's going to have a greater desire and a greater motivation to get after the goals. Great for him. The problem is that most people nowadays who work online, who work remotely, have skin in the game completely removed from their lives, right? Because they send a Slack message online, they click, they X out a window. All of this is just pixels on a screen in front of you. It doesn't really seem real, right? There's no intruder breaking into your home with a gun or threatening your family, anything like that. We're living a very comfortable existence. So skin in the game has been removed completely. But as soon as you introduce consequences, non-lethal consequences into the picture with something, behavior that you want to remove in your life, then it activates like a second brain that makes motivation not even a it's not motivation would make you want to keep your family alive. It's just like, I have to do this. There's no other option. I have to do this. It's life or death. And I think that's the problem, is that we're just living in a society of decadence and complacency. A lot of people just become very complacent, and it's a consequence of living in a first world country, I would say.
Excellent points, Marc. And thanks again for the very specific and real life example. Keeping obviously the client's confidentiality, give an example that everyone can relate. Is it, can you wake up and kick yourself in the butt and do something today or this month and do it great? Are you going to give yourself a little bit more leeway and not so motivated because you're not sure that you can achieve, or that if you can maintain it? And again, this idea of ownership, accountability, and skin in the game is we are very removed from a lot of our biological motivator, which is in-person threats, as you mentioned, in-person rewards. And now we're getting elusive, or even money sometimes can be elusive, right? So what is $1,000 in a euro account, or, it's money, it's zeros. It can be Bitcoin. It can be, so even money has become a little bit not always the prime motivator. And then when we're talking about the crisis of meaning, so how can we have a goal or some goals or some mindset that we want to achieve that are aligned with our purpose and also with the ability to still generate, oxytocin and vasopressin, have the social interaction, and being sometime removed from that more than most of the part of the day, right? When we have a lot of work on, on Slack, on Teams, on video conferences. And those are amazing tools, but they also remove us to be accountable sometimes to our colleagues or our bosses, but also to ourselves.
Yes, especially for remote workers. Like we've talked about this before on the podcast as well, but just take the scenario, young college grad economics degree gets a job at a tech company, no work experience. The job is completely remote. You'll do your onboarding online in your parents' living room on your computer. You're alone for most of the day, except your cat walks in the room from time to time. Everybody's gone. You're expected to learn just on this laptop that they sent you. That's a very, very difficult scenario for a lot of early career professionals, right? A lot of people who are very early in their career who are expected to learn without interfacing with mentors, with experts in an office setting or in any setting, right? I think that's a huge consequence that's not talked about enough. Perhaps that even started during COVID. We talk about the effects on schools, putting youngsters in front of screens, but the effect of people on screens who don't have any real work experience is also a huge effect. So people with very little life experience, to just put a screen in front of them and say like, hey, this thing supplants all of that life experience. You don't need to have a mentor. You don't need to go into office. You don't need to do an internship. You don't need to do any of that. Just send us a Slack if you ever have any questions. That doesn't cut it. That creates like a really incompetent workforce. I'm sorry, but that's the case.
Or your favorite LLM, ask Chat or ask Claude or Gemini what you should do or how to learn, right? Or watch a YouTube video, which it's great that we have, again, this technology. We have this available of knowledge and training. And I've worked in e-learning for a long time, but it also has to be tailored to a real setting where people can learn and use those tools and then remember them, right? Not just study for the exam and forget it the other day or watch a YouTube video and don't know what to do afterwards, right?
What if, imagine this, like you were getting onto a flight and you found out the pilot only took online classes, to become a pilot. Or like you're getting a heart surgery and you find out your surgeon watched videos online, learned everything online, but he never did a residency, never watched people. Like you'd be like, no way, I'm not getting surgery from that guy. I'm not going to get on that plane, because we recognize inherently that tech does not replace the real human experience of experiential knowledge, right? There's theoretical versus experiential knowledge. Yep. And online is just theoretical for the most part. Experiential is like doing the thing, getting rejected, learning how to deal with it and trying again.
That's why it's very important for teams, especially remote and hybrid teams, to know that and to create some environments and some company culture that allows for further development, learning, training, and then open communication where people feel that they are able to share that. I remember now, almost 2 years ago when we were, building this company and you said, Marc, I'm not motivated because we're just speaking through screens, me and you. We didn't have a team at that time. And then we started to open, some afternoon, just me and you working with the open screen where we can see that there's still some interaction. Yeah. And those are one of many tools that we can bring to organizations, including our own, to help remediate this kind of gap in human connection that we're trying to build on in organization and in the world in general, right?
Yeah. And we're obviously, we founded AWE, but we're also here to just offer advice on how to improve well-being. And, what we did, sharing a screen, super helpful for me, right? Back then, there are ways to, if you are in a situation where you really can only work remotely, there are ways to mimic an office environment. There's a website called Attention Me, I think it's called. I forgot the name of it, but basically it's like the chat roulette for It's called FocusMate. FocusMate, that's what it's called. So FocusMate is a website where you randomly get matched with somebody around the world, and you guys just say like, okay, in the next hour, I want to work on this. And they're like, okay, I want to work on this. And then you turn off your mics and you just work together for an hour. And people say it's like one of the best productivity websites that they found, because you want to know that you want to feel like you're working together with somebody while you're kind of alone in the house. And a lot of times when you are working remotely, it's just you and a computer screen and some Excel files on there, not a real person. So you don't have the feeling of being in a coffee shop or being in an office setting. It's just you alone. So I think we got a little bit off track. Like I want to bring it back a little bit more to the CommTech side of things, but I always enjoy these conversations so much with you that we just go on to tangents sometimes.
No problem. And now we're getting back to the subject, just to remind the audience, we are live on Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, and perhaps more. If you have any questions or comments about what we're saying about the topic, about other things, about mental health, wellness, happiness, please feel free to join us on the conversation. Go ahead, Marc.
Yeah. So, I mean, before we get into some specific studies, would you be able to share with us, like, where did the CommTech movement come from? Like, some of the origin story of all this stuff?
So the CommTech started in the 90s. We had this Xerox pack that taught about designing technology that were calmer, right? So that was a good idea. Unfortunately, that didn't really make it to 2026 yet. Yeah, so that's been 30 years ago. So there has been some things that, they talked about minimalism, like phones are become more minimalist. There's a few apps that are more streamlined, but they also talked a lot about attention and how we had limited attention, and that computers and technology and devices should not steer us away from our maximum human attention. So that's where the movement came. There was further research years later, and some people are still looking at some of this tech design. We'll share some more papers and books around this. But yeah, basically it came in 95, 96, a group that wanted to make the tech a little bit better. So we're kind of reviving in 2025, 26 as making this CommTech a reality, because the reality is it has not been very calm. It's been pretty much a storm.
And I think even before 2025, the COVID-19 pandemic, ushered in like just a whole entire new realm of work, and a lot of things were shut down. We had, quarantine, lockdowns, all that stuff. But it did usher in a lot of new capitalistic opportunities for new businesses. A lot of apps that perhaps people who are listening have heard of before, Headspace, Calm, were introduced as ways to introduce the modern world to meditation and mindfulness. And a lot of these apps are really well known, and they're used a lot today. The one that I wanted to cite, maybe you can bring this up on the screen right now, is actually a study conducted on college students with the Calm app that is one of the competitors of exactly is this one. So it's the efficacy of the mindfulness meditation mobile app Calm to reduce stress amongst college students. So basically this study really looked at how effective is an app like Calm. And Calm is representative of a lot of different apps that are on the market right now. And they wanted to test whether it could reduce stress and improve well-being in college students specifically who are experiencing elevated stress levels. College students are a great sample size because they're super stressed all the time. They've got final exams, all that stuff. But it was an 8-week randomized control trial with these students who were asked to meditate at least 10 minutes per day using that app. So there are 88 college students who participated, and they were randomly assigned to either the Calm intervention group or control group. And so what the perceived outcomes that were measured in this study were stress, mindfulness, self-compassion, and some additional health behaviors like sleep quality, drinking, physical activity, healthy eating. And so what they found from the study was that there were significant reductions in stress among students who used the app compared to the control group. And there were significant increases in mindfulness and self-compassion. And then they were statistically significant. And so the effect sizes were moderate to large, showing meaningful improvements in the mental health outcomes. And so students who used it, they really did like the app. And what does this mean overall was that mobile app-based mindfulness meditation that you see in Headspace and Calm can be an effective, accessible tool to reduce stress and boost mindfulness and self-compassion. in college students. So for everything that we said, we're kind of doing our old rant on technology, but there are a lot of great apps like Calm, Headspace, and even, Lumi from AWE, which we just introduced a few weeks ago, that are very effective at reducing stress, increasing self-compassion, which invariably increase focus, because focus is a direct consequence of a lot of internal processes. Like you're distracted by your own thoughts, ruminating, which perhaps causes you to be unable to focus, right? When people say, I can't focus, it's really because they have a lot of internal chatter going on, external or internal distraction going on. And the internal distraction is often a consequence of these factors that we had just discussed, anxiety, depression, rumination, and the lack of self-compassion, right? So long story short, very effective.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, we have, looked at Calm and Headspace, which are some of our competitors, but also, they're there to support some people, some organization. We don't see the world in black and white, competitors, foes, or friends. They were just, people, an organization trying to help. We try to do things a little bit different at AWE. One of the things you mentioned, Lumi. So Lumi is our AI coach, which is not a therapist, but can help a lot in terms of mindfulness. We'll have more information on mindfulness, meditation-ish breathing techniques, and we're having some more discoveries and announcements in February concerning that. In terms of Lumi, so far, it's been launched, been more than a month in the market. We have already a few hundred users, so feel free to go to our website at awedigitalwellness.com, find Lumi, Lumi, and you can download it on WhatsApp or try it there. It has been shown to increase not only self-compassion, but compassion, right? Compassion is one of the 7 C's, how the model has been trained, and it increases creativity and curiosity and courage. So all the things that you need for the new years. And it helps change habits. Basically it can help you be accountable. It is not a human. It doesn't pretend to be, but it can help you a little bit in terms of finding ways to change your habits, including, as you mentioned, self-compassion, which is for yourself. But a lot of things that we've seen that the other competitors is really looking at self, your mind, your meditation. It's a little bit what we talked about, the eye of ego, right? So at AWE, we're really trying to, include enjoyment that includes awe, which is normally 60% of awe is induced by you seeing someone and being inspired by their qualities, right? So some others are by nature. You can be inspired by nature, but just seeing someone else that you admire, that you see something nice traits in them, that may inspire you to do better, right? And we want to create this community that's human-centered so that we are not just focusing on you and then you can, either praise or blame yourself. No, it's not about that. It's focused on the community, and then the community can always support each other with no blame or no shame. And that means also sometimes no praise. And that's okay to just, not want to have praise or have high, or we don't want to have low self-esteem or low self-worth, but you don't need to inflate your ego either. Just be happy that you're alive and sharing this time with us. So those are some of my thoughts on that paper. But very good finding, decreasing stress, increasing mindfulness and self-compassion. So it does mean that technology can have some positive effects.
Absolutely. Right. Again, it's not just bashing on technology. There are good solutions and alternatives to alleviate a lot of stress. If you are in a situation where you're not able to go see a therapist or not able to go meditate in person, or you're not able to go to the gym or do any physical activity, there are accessible solutions online for you.
Great. So I also looked at some scientific paper. One of them is actually looking at Headspace studies, and as well as Calm. So Calm, the only study that you saw and found, Mark, was in 2019. That's the only RCT studies. But Headspace seemed to have much more scientifically validated studies, but this paper is actually looking at a systematic review of them and comparing to see if there are some potential efficacy differences. You mentioned increase in mindfulness and self-compassion, decrease in stress. Some study have found some mixed results. Let's look at that a little bit together. And so here's the name of the study. And we also looked at potential conflict of interest, right? So a lot of studies are done, but are they paid by the big multi-million-dollar giants, the 2 biggest mindfulness apps? Yes, some of them have found some conflict of interest from authors of the studies and also from the participants that were giving perks. So not completely ethically, safely saying that those are perfect results. Although we do see, and there is the conclusion that it is promising. If you want to share a bit more, I think I have some more slides on this. So yeah, the conclusion says, and you can zoom in or pause if you want, or go see the actual paper. It does say that there is some promise, especially for Headspace. And then, again, we're going to be writing an article on Headspace and Calm soon. Our director of marketing is looking at that to show kind of what they've been doing. And what we keep saying is that, and I think you nailed it, Marc, is that Calm and Headspace came, decade and a half, a bit more than that, when this was really needed. And they did a good job for the last decade. They've had tens of millions of users and help organizations, but they're still using old information. And at all, we're trying to bring you the up-to-date, the most recent, the now 2026 preprints and studies. We're doing our own studies ourselves as well, and try to have no bias in them as we were looking at this conflict of interest, and just trying to find the best science to help people. What can we do with the information today? Not for monetary gain, just how can we help people? And is it validated scientifically? So we have one more slide on this paper that shows the graph of what some of those studies have found. So again, some have found no or negative. So that's in the yellow, but more than half, at some point 40 to 60% have found some positive result for mindfulness, well-being in general, happiness, decrease in stress, like you mentioned, anxiety, and depression. So depression is the most positive, removing depressive symptom. All the studies were with non-clinical population, meaning they were not people diagnosed with major depression or bipolar depression, but just the subjective well-being, subjective feelings of depressive symptoms. So pretty interesting finding. And then the Calm app, we looked at 102 participants. The others had varying degrees of number of participants as well to look at those symptoms. And those were quantitative studies, not qualitative. So it'd be interesting to look at qualitative studies as well and see how that could be used.
So is the overall conclusion from these studies that there is a significant improvement when in mental health when
about 40% of the studies in general showed improvement in those metrics. Yes.
Okay. I think it's interesting because, we're talking about stress and perhaps a lot of the typical burnout symptoms that we see amongst workers, but there's still, it would be interesting to investigate like the effect of addiction treatment apps, for example, and to see how effective they are, whether you need an in-person treatment model or if is it enough to just track the days of sobriety, that like Alcoholics Anonymous gives you like medals for 100, 200 days sober. How effective are those apps?
I know that some of the studies in that meta-analysis were looking at addiction specifically. And then I saw some others looking at specifically alcohol consumption. But now we know that there is another addiction called technological addiction or social media addiction or gaming or gambling addiction.
Oh, yeah.
So there might be a lot of things that we look at, but basically, besides our Lumi AI has really looked at creating this reset program to help people. And I do the resets on Tuesday, and then we'll have some Patreon coming very soon so that you can have more variety of resets. And those are helpful for addiction. They're helpful from depression and anxiety symptoms. They're helpful for stress regulation. They're helpful for loneliness. We talked about people feeling alone, right? We provide live. And when we look at Calm and Headspace, everything of what they have is recorded. We actually have live synchronous meetings where you can, like this live show, you can be there and ask questions. You can be there and interact. And then we'll have also recorded. So if you missed this live, you can watch it later. If you missed this reset, you can also watch it later. But, please register for a free reset when you have the chance on our website again, digitalwellness.com. And more importantly, let's, give some more free tools to the audience. Those resets are free. Just sign in when you have the chance and get to interact and experience some of that calm, and the speed is 25 minutes. So not too fast, not too slow. But as you mentioned in your study, 8 weeks was asking only 8 or 10 minutes of meditation. Was it medium 8 minutes, if I'm right?
10 minutes.
Yeah. 10 minutes. Yeah. So we're asking a little bit more because we want them to be slower, to be better, and to make you realize that you can use that extra 15 minutes to just be calm.
Yeah.
Just contemplate, to be content, and to bring a bit more joy back in your life before you go back and do all the good things that you're doing for the world.
I will say that like meditating once for 10 minutes you're likely not going to feel like a huge change. It's not like going on an ayahuasca trip and you're like, oh my God, that's the meaning of my life, right? After you've meditated for 15 minutes. We do increase the length of the meditation sits at awe just because we believe that, meditating for 15, 20 minutes or if not more creates a more impactful experience where you perhaps instead of having to wait 3 months to achieve a certain effect, you'd have to wait 2 months or even less than that, right? So the longer time you're willing to meditate at once means like perhaps the less time you have to wait overall in terms of days or weeks or months to actually achieve like a very calm state that you are looking for, a very mindful state. 10 minutes a day is not much. All right? Anybody can do 10 minutes a day, but to really achieve a meaningful effect with 10 minutes a day, you'd have to stay consistent for perhaps a longer time than with 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day.
And we know that experienced meditators normally, and we had someone at a Christmas party from our scientific board of director that's a scientist, a psychiatrist, and she meditates 1 hour a day, right? Most experienced meditators is between 30 and hours. Some meditate twice a day. Some do also mini meditation. So we're not, aiming or targeting only expert meditators, but we want to push the boundaries of people who have not done meditation or resets, because what we do is not only meditation. It's a combination of breath work, of visualization, and of meditation type states. And it includes things like oneness that not many other apps or people out there do. So yeah, it's a very special cocktail of fun stuff that we do in 25 minutes. And then we'll have a little bit longer lengths for experts and a little bit shorter for sometimes people don't have that time. But our live sessions are 25 minutes, as mentioned again. And those are kind of ways to, as we talked about, slow things down to a point where it's livable and enjoyable, right? Because just imagine that you're going in the highway, right? You're perhaps in Germany, you're going to the Autobahn at 200K per hour. You're not really seeing the scenery, right? You're going fast somewhere, but you're not enjoying the view. So we want to make sure that we're going to a good speed where we're still mindful and we can still enjoy the journey as we're going along.
Exactly. Enjoy the way while you're trying to get to the goal without feeling pressured all the time, right? I have to get it now. Can have a little urgency, but you can also be calm along the way.
Well, I did want to share another book that is related to our subject. So that's called Calm Technology, which is Amber Case rendition of an updated manual for calm design that is available on O'Reilly and on Google Books. And just to give you some idea, this book is there to give us back some of what the 95, 96 ideas of calm technology should be and give some clear guidelines. The first part that I found really interesting, and again, this book I think is in 2005, and it says, what will be the next 50 billion devices or 50 billion smartphones, 50 billion tablets or computers, right? So we know that the Earth population is 8 billion and that most people have more than one device or have had more than one devices. So we've reached 50 billion devices in the last 20 years, basically, right? And have they been very good to us? Have they been useful? Yes. Have they been good to our mental health? Probably not. So that's why, we created a new device that was launched last year, but available again in 2026. You can also check our website, digitalwellness.com, and look at products, and you'll see the smarter phone, which has been designed for some of the things that this book talks about. So Alfredo, maybe you want to share the next and last slide, which talks about the hallmark of what should be a good design. Lowest mental cost. Isn't that a great, 3 words? And then, so that means the smallest amount of time that takes your attention. We talked a lot about how companies are using and selling your attention. They're called actually eyeballs. And it's very funny way to think that you're being sold your eyeballs like in a black market of slavery where your eyeballs are worth something. But that's what attention is to those marketers, and not our marketing teams, which are trying to help you guys. And then it should inform and create calm, right? Not anxiety, not nomophobia, which is fear of my battery or my phone dying.
Right.
The design should be there to give you calm. And that's what we're trying to do at AWE, is to make our products, our AI, our resets, our website, our podcasts for your calm, right? Breathe in, breathe out, smile to your friend or colleague, hug your kids, and develop some calm before you go back to do all the nice things you have to do, right? And then technology can communicate, but doesn't need to speak. That's an interesting one. Are we bombarded by like things speaking too loud, notifications all the time, always having this, people chatting with their AI, which again, we're not against, but in what way and in what capacity? And is it fail safe so that it's designed to work even when it fails? So those are the elements of good design in this book. If you're building technology, I suggest you take a look at this book, at those articles. If you want to build something with us, contact us. I'm having a meeting next week with someone who just developed an app similar, complementary to us, based in Canada. We're going to be talking anywhere in the world. If you guys are building tech for good, feel free to reach out to Marc and myself. And any comments on that design mentality, Marc?
I think it alludes back to what I said before, is that reduce friction, reduce the number of steps needed to achieve a certain goal, and you'll increase that behavior. If you want to go to the gym, set out your gym clothes the night before so you don't have to think about going to the gym in the morning, because when you want starting a new habit or goal, right, it seems overwhelming because there's all these new steps that you have to do. And I think if you make it as simple as possible, as familiar as possible to yourself, then it's much easier to achieve. So 100% agree with the reducing friction point.
Thanks, Marc. And again, for all these January, new year, new me, or new month, or new today, new now, new me, it's a long journey. But we're here to help. Might it be, quitting smoking or quitting crack cocaine or quitting TikTok or just, being nicer to people around you. Those are all noble goals, and there's nothing too big or too small, just as long as you have a purpose to do that and that it can bring a bit more joy to you and people around you.
Absolutely. So, were there any other studies that you were interested in sharing regarding ComTech movement?
Not to date. I did earmark a few others for another potential episode. Or just to talk between you and me, but I just wanted to give a few of the interesting science, the systematic review, the origin of ComTech. You brought a good study about Com. We are always looking at what our colleagues, competitors, other people in the space are doing, and trying to stay current and above and relevant. Although it's not about our individual or company ego. It's just make sure that we're here to help and serve our community.
Absolutely. Perhaps we can move to the Q&A then, see if there's any questions that any of the audience members have. Anybody who's watching, feel free to put into the chat. I know that this is a super relevant topic to a lot of people who do work in the tech space, a lot of people who perhaps coming from LinkedIn who are watching. So any questions, feel free to put in the chat. Christian and I will try to answer to the best of our knowledge and our abilities.
Thanks, Marc. And once again, thanks for our recurring, viewers. I know we've been doing a lot since September. We're doing one podcast every week. We'll be continuing to do this, hopefully, as long as we can this year. We've have some guest appearances on other podcasts coming up as well. Some other surprises, some guests coming to our podcast that you'll also meet soon. Yeah, just been a wonderful year. Also wanted to thank the marketing team for, if you guys haven't checked out the 2025 podcast highlights, show some of our marketing team members, as well as some of the best reels, including some typical laughter that we normally have between Marc and myself or the guests. So fun moments and also insights that people enjoyed. Thank you if you're taking the time to write comments today. If you also want to reach out on social media or on the website after, I know I've had quite a few comments of people reaching out to me after the podcast. They couldn't get it to see it live. So we'll be also looking to hear from your comments or insights afterwards as well.
Yeah, and I really loved that video. I was just huge smile on my face when I was watching that video earlier. And I think really bringing that sense of joy to everyone is a huge part of our mission as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to, add a few more points when we talked about like the speed versus the calm versus the reflective versus the wise. Have you ever seen any wise men? We can have pictures of the Buddha or Plato and Aristotle and Socrates. Have you seen any of them always in a rush, or they're normally calm and poised, right? So calm actually sharpens judgment, right? When you're in a rush, you make more mistakes. Your prefrontal cortex will make rash decision. And it doesn't mean you have to procrastinate and wait forever. But speed without, emotional regulation creates errors, right? So you need to regulate your emotion, regulate your thoughts as well, and be there in a space of confidence and capacity more than just urgency, or some of my closing remarks. And calm actually sustains high performance, right? You can have fast and high performance, but if you want to sustain it, you need kind of an aura, a mindset, an attitude of calm around the things that you're doing. Again, the best leaders are also making decisions with calm and rationale and confidence, right? So we want to create that for ourselves and be the leaders in our lives, in our professional lives, in our personal lives, in our creative lives, to, again, bring joy, be better, succeed, growth, and be wiser this year.
100%. And one other tip or a piece of advice that I wanted to add before we sign off is that perhaps instead of trying to do everything so quickly, try perhaps to do a little experiment with yourself for a week. Do just 2 to 3 things, 2 to 3 really important things every day. When you do less, less is more in a certain sense. And it's easier for the brain to comprehend perhaps fewer number of projects that are on the calendar than just a ton of different multitasking steps that or activities that are in there. That's where overwhelm comes in.
Thanks. And, I would say if you feel stuck, again, stick with one task. We're not very good at multitasking. There's some study that shows that we're just pretending. Do one thing right, then do the next thing right, or even better. Do something amazing and share, and just continue. And please, we've all had some pause during the holidays, but make sure to incorporate pause and rest and reset and calm in the rest of your day, in the rest of your week, in the rest of your month. And please come and if you haven't tried, subscribe for a free reset, which will bring you 25 minutes of calm and pause. In a world that never slows down, perhaps choosing calm is revolutionary. So thanks again for the audience. Thanks, Marc, for the amazing chat, like always. And to all our community that is supporting us through many ways, through podcasts, through interaction, through our new team members that joined our tech team this week, to everyone working hard to make amazing and to make people shine even more in 2026.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And I hope you had a very good start to 2026. Maintain that energy, but just remember, it doesn't have to be momentary motivation. You can carry this through to the end of the year. And please reach out if you would like additional support. We can't wait to see you again on our next stream next time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Resets for Leaders and Regulation as Leadership Skill is the name of our next stream on Friday, January 9th. Signing off. Have a great rest of the day and weekend. I'm going to go ski, so hopefully I won't have any broken anything by next week. All right.
And
See
you guys. Bye, Christian. See ya.
Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week for more awe and awesome conversations. Make sure to follow us and comment on your thoughts on this week's topic. I'm your happiness expert and co-host, Christian Dominique. Please find and reach out to us directly and visit our website at awe-digitalwellness.com. See you next time. Thanks for your curiosity. Looking forward to your comments, and keep on smiling.